Traversing categories of commercial and fine art, Dinesh Khanna's diverse photographic practice reflects the multiplicity of urban India as well as the other Indias he seeks out on his travels to rural areas, villages, bazaars, melas, and sacred sites. In images that fluctuate between the dazzling and the desolate, the imposing and intimate, the communal and concealed, exquisite compositions are graced by a masterful manipulation of light. As chronicles of contemporary life, his monthly magazine columns, Double Take and Urban Trivia, offer shrewd commentary, affectionately critiquing India's tryst with urbanity.
For me, photography was more than just a means of making a living. For me, it was an expression, a medium which I would want to explore things with and also be able to express with. I was lucky enough to pick up photography, from the time I was in school because my father was a photographer. Interestingly, he used to work for the American Embassy with the information services. But as I was growing older and it came to a time when I had to decide on, what career I'd like to follow, I was very clear that I don't want to be a photographer. And even though I love photography, I didn't see any reason why I had to be a photographer just because my father was one. So I kind of, drifted into advertising. But towards the last couple of years, I had this feeling in me that I don't want to do this anymore. And my first love is photography. And I want to find a way of getting back to that. So I asked my dad if he'll, buy me a ticket to go to the US, and so I can go and study photography in New York, because I felt that that's the mecca of photography. So he sponsored me a one-way ticket. So that's how I landed up in New York. I was there about 5-6 months, still trying to find my feet and get admission into some school there. And my father died in a car crash, and then I decided that I would come back to India. And then I joined back advertising because that's the only thing I knew. I didn't have the money to be able to afford, freelancing, etc. So that's how it was. Having spent 12 years in advertising, I also realized that I was very much a city, Delhi, Bombay kind of Indian, very urban Indian. And having traveled a bit earlier, I did realize that, India is the kind of country where there are at least two Indias, if not more. Photography became my way of exploring this other country. If you're sitting in Delhi, you don't really understand what a camel mela in Pushkar is about. What it means to be in a place where there are 2,000 camels. Or if you've not been to Banaras at Shivratri, you don't know what it means to be on the ghats amongst thousands of people. If you've not been to the Kumbh and you've not actually woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning and felt that vibe of millions of people who had the same reason for being there, so that's what really fascinated me. That's what really became my reason for photography. Well, I was also very clear that I have to make a living, and so my commercial photography is continued, and it's continued right through even till today. I do advertising work, I do editorial, I do architecture, I work for hotels, and I work for fancy hotels, I shoot fancy food. And I love it. I love the fact that I can, actually do such contrasting things with photography, and I feel blessed for it. The Incredible India campaign was something which was devised by an agency called Trikaya, which was working for the Ministry of Tourism. When the Ministry of Tourism had assigned them the campaign for doing this particular one, which was supposed to commemorate the 350th anniversary of the Taj. And I was very clear that I didn't want to shoot the Taj as this beautiful, white, pristine, marvel of architecture. So what we devised was that let's bring in India, and of course, it's not that, on the banks of the river, whether it's the rickshaws or whether it's the kids flying kites or whether it's, the women drying saris, those are all things which I have from my experience and my memory of India, which, I see happening all the time. But when you're doing a commercial assignment, you do it in a certain specified period of time, because you go for a week or 3 days or 5 days, whatever it is, and you're supposed to deliver those 5 pictures. You can't just hang around waiting for women to come and dry saris and then wait for 3 more days for the kids to start flying kites. So therefore, from one's experiences of what one has seen of Indian life, we arranged to bring all that and set it up and shoot it with the Taj as the backdrop. What all we can do is something which came from my experiences of how India lives and what happens on the streets and on the ghats and all that. Well, the interesting thing is that Bazaar and All Living Faith were not formalized. They were not shot as projects. I was just traveling and using my camera as a way of exploration. I was just using it to familiarize myself with this other country which belonged to me, but which seemed that I didn't belong to. I was only reacting to and working with what I saw as a person, as an Indian, and an Indian who felt that he was an alien in his own land. I went back to my 10, 11 years with the travel photography, looked at that, then found that there were these two very strong streams, one to do with the Bazaar and one to do with faith. And that again is not because I'd consciously thought so, but I think I just was responding to the individual. For instance, the Bazaar is not about the vast markets or the mela. Even within them, it's always that one person who is trying to find dignity to make their own living. Is that one person who's set up a stall at the corner of a bazaar, and how that person's using color in his merchandise to be able to attract customers. Strangely enough, for a person who's done a book on faith, I am totally, non-religious. I don't believe in any particular religion. I'm not a practicing Hindu, though I'm a born Hindu. But I'm very clear that, there's a difference between faith and religion. Faith is something which an individual has, and, which makes a person think of something larger than yourself and respect that. Whatever form or name that person wants to give it, it's their business. Religion, as far as I'm concerned, is the organizing of that faith for the benefit of the organizer. So I wanted to make that very clear distinction between faith and religion. And I was doing that instinctively. It wasn't like I went out searching for those moments or whatever. But in retrospect, when I was looking at the picture, I realized that that's what I am linking with. That's what, my empathy is for. Is for the individual, is for those solitary moments, is for that person looking for dignity in the larger, madder, chaotic, India. The series on dignity obviously came from within the bazaar, because that's actually where it's about. I do look out for people who I feel in India are not given enough respect for what they're doing. Because I think if you're not stealing, if you're not begging on the street, and you've had the guts, and you've had the dignity to say, I will work for a living, no matter what. And even if it seems to be below someone's station or whatever it is, I will still do it. Especially since in India it seems that begging, for instance, can be a very easy option. And not just a very easy option, it's supposed to be a profitable option. So a person who is going through hard times, that they say, no, I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to make a living. I feel one needs to recognize that and give it its due honor. Double Take was an idea which I had, and when I spoke to the editor of First City magazine, it was actually conceived as a six-part thing which we do for 6 months. It meant as a monthly column. I was taking the picture of these 6 boys, and suddenly one of the boys just pulled apart his shirt and said, "Main bhi Shah Rukh Khan." And he was taking off from the fact Shah Rukh Khan is a very well-known Indian film star, and in that time a film of his had come, in which he had developed 6 packs, especially for that picture. And this scrawny little kid, pulled his shirt apart just at the moment when I shot that picture to say that he's also Shah Rukh Khan. And what he was showing me, of course, was 12 ribs, rather than a 6-pack. But so it's just, like I said, it's just not just about political commentary. It's not just about social commentary. It's not just about making, a point about how bad things are. It's just about to me, irony can also be comedy, and so that's what Double Take was about. I mean, India is the kind of country where I could actually do it for the rest of my life. I probably still do. I still do shoot those pictures. It's not like I'm not doing that. But I didn't want to, keep doing it as a conscious thing. And for about 6-8 months, I didn't do a column. And then because I was still shooting, and I spoke to Bharat again, And I said, look, what I want to do is urban trivia. There are too many things in India which we don't comment about. We see it all the time, but we become blind to it. I just feel that in India, society has been brought up, especially since we became independent, since we are a socialist-minded government, and it insisted that they will do it all, as far as the civic and the social is concerned. I think most Indians have been brought up to feel that they don't need to do anything or they can't do anything about the roads, about the potholes, about the water situation, about the electricity situation, about garbage on the street. I'm not making excuses for the fact that people are not being proactive in terms of doing these things, but I do look for a reason why they don't, all right? There's also, to my mind, a kind of a religious background to this. To my mind, Hinduism is a very personal, very individual kind of religion. It's an individual transaction with the God I believe in. So that's these two different kind of things which are happening. There's also the helplessness of the average Indian today, because it takes so much time and energy to just make a living, to just go from morning to evening to look after the fact that there's no water at home, the fact that there's power cuts, the fact that what do I do about my child's education, etc., etc. That to be public-minded and to get into protest is almost impossible for most people. So that's where India is about, and that's where, for instance, that phrase, "we are like that" only comes from. It's sarcastic, and it's an excuse. It's the Indian way of saying, "So what if things are like that? That's the way we are. You like it or lump it." So there is a certain anger, there's a certain sarcasm, but there's also an apology, all kind of bundled into that one phrase. The flip side of that really is that we got blinded to a lot of things. We've turned that into trivial things. The entire process of urbanization, for instance, in India, that actually has been really horrible, because one, I think this happened really fast. Two, since we've not been very public-minded people. Three, because we have had governments which do not take on the responsibility which they say they will, and then are not held accountable for that. So it's just really a kind of an amalgamation of all these reasons why we find, especially the urban areas in India, in such a mess. And there's no what comes first. Did the photograph come first, or did the feeling come first? At times it's the feeling, and I go and look for a photograph. For instance, there's a photograph of these two girls with the back to the camera. I shot that about a year ago, and it's only when this entire thing of the gang rape happened in Delhi that I felt that the body language of these girls, the barbed wire there, it's a picture which fits into my feeling for what I have two daughters. It's something which has really affected me very deeply. So I realized that there were pictures I was doing at that particular time, which there was a sense of irony, there was a sense of conflict, there was a sense of contrast. And that probably is from the fact that I do find India, in a way, very infuriating and very lovable simultaneously. It's a schizophrenic country, and I think probably makes for schizophrenic citizens like me. These columns, in a way, have disciplined me into looking at things in a structured manner, and more importantly, on a regular basis, which I do actually find, for a lazy person like me, works very well.